the recent poll with amongst Catholics, white Catholics, Mitt Romney is beating President Obama significantly. But when they polled Hispanic Catholics, he's getting decimated by Obama. So my question to you is, why do you think there's such a disconnect between Hispanic Catholics and Mitt Romney and not Obama?
Well, I mean, obviously that's an interesting poll, but I don't think it has anything to do with Catholicism. It probably has to do with the Hispanic, non-Hispanic aspects of it. And here's what people have to remember, because with all this hyperbole and people getting hyperventilated about the Hispanic vote, number one is there is no such thing as a monolithic Hispanic vote. It is very much determined by where you live, how long you've been here, those sorts of things.
Where you're from.
Sometimes where you're from. But even that, for example, geography is a big deal. So let me give you a perfect example. Once again, Cuban exiles. Cuban exiles are largely considered conservative Republicans. And that is true in South Florida. But the exact same Cuban exiles, with the exact same experience, with the exact same view of Fidel Castro, if they grew up in New Jersey, are probably Democrats. So you have Albi Alcide and Bob Menendez, Cubans from New Jersey, who are anti-Castro, but on every other issue, they're Democrats. Why? Because they grew up and live in New Jersey. Same with my cousin. My first cousin is a Cuban American just like I am. He is the Democratic leader of the state Senate in Nevada. Same family, same experience. But he grew up in Las Vegas, and I primarily have been here in Miami. So my point is that geography is a big deal. So if you've grown up in California, New York, states where the Democratic Party dominates politics at every level, you are likelier to identify as a Democrat. And you bring that to the table before we get to any of these other conversations.
So what do you think Mitt Romney and the Republican Party, what are they doing wrong, or what are they doing not to connect? What can they do?
There is a group of Americans out there that happen to be of Hispanic descent that are not identified with one party or with another. And those are the ones that we should focus on. Whether, for example, recent arrivals from Puerto Rico that live in Central Florida have shown a tendency to vote for Republicans, or they vote for the candidate, not for the party. I think you're seeing opportunities to do that in other parts of the country as well. And I think what we need to, obviously, they look to the immigration issue as a signal of how you feel about Hispanics on the messaging front, but really the dominant issue is the economy. And Americans of Hispanic descent are obsessed with leaving their kids better off than themselves, giving their children opportunities that they themselves didn't have. That's what drives them. And the Republicans have to make a persuasive and consistent argument that the American free enterprise system is the best economic system in the world for that to be possible. That in essence, our policies are good for their dreams, and the Democrats and the president's policies are bad for their dreams. And you can't just make that argument 6 months before an election. You have to consistently drive that point home over and over again. You know, included in all this, we have to remind ourselves that the enormous majority of Hispanics in the United States are here legally. The enormous majority of Hispanics in this country don't have an immigration problem. The enormous majority of Hispanics in this country do not support illegal immigration or an open border or ignoring our immigration laws, but they do sympathize with people that find themselves in these circumstances because they know them, they live with them, they love them, and they're related to them.
So you don't think there's anything, it has nothing to do with the fact that, you know, you and I know this very well since we're Hispanic. The Hispanics are inherently conservative. You know, you don't think that doesn't play God, the God issues have anything to do with the fact that.
Well, I think on the social issues, you're going to find that the Republican Party is more in tune with the Hispanic community than the Democratic Party is. But that doesn't overcome, you know, historical party affiliation that exists in some parts of this country, and that's not going to overcome, you know, if they think the Republican Party doesn't speak to them or doesn't belong to them. I think that's just not, it's not true, and we need to do a better job of pointing that out. That in fact, if your desire is to leave your kids better off than yourself, if your desire is to own your own business or get ahead in life, the free enterprise system that Republicans stand for is a much better system than the big government system that the Democrats stand for. But that takes time. You got to consistently drive that point home, and there's not enough voices doing that right now.
And you're one of them.
Trying to be.